Hello, everyone. Hello. Happy Tuesday. Happy Tuesday. Hope you all are doing wonderful. Happy Tuesday. Hope you all are having a wonderful, productive Tuesday. um, Hold on, everybody. I'm trying to turn off my phone so I don't disturb my own self while I'm doing this. So today I wanted to talk about how to be able to get mainstream publicity in 2020 and beyond on a consistent basis. Look, I get a lot of people that ask me things around how do you hire publicists and who is your publicist and how do you get a media company to be able to represent you, who's your booking agent. And I get a lot of people asking me those questions, and I always say that you can attract those things, but it starts with publicity. So for those of you who are in a space where you're trying to figure out how do you get paid to do what you want to do, how do you get paid to speak, how do you get paid for your advice, how do you just get paid for your influence, and you're really struggling with that whole how do people value you? How do people come into your space? How do they come into your orbit? How do they communicate with you? You really have to be on this level of getting mainstream publicity. Now, when I say mainstream, I'm not talking about your friends' blogs. I'm not talking about little mentions at a little speaking event. I'm talking Wall Street Journal, New York Times, O Magazine, Essence, Ebony, anything that you can think of that you've always wanted to see yourself in. How do you get into those publications? They're not as hard as you think they are, first and foremost, but they do require you to be able to have a level of, I would say, expanded expertise that you have to learn how to kind of juxtapose amongst other things. So like I said, if you're looking for publicity to get into the New York Times, the Washington Post, the Essence Magazine, things like that, Wall Street Journal, I have done Forbes, I've done Inc., I've done Entrepreneur, I've done Cosmopolitan Magazine, I've done Glamour Magazine, all of those publications. Again, they're not as hard as you think. I think what we do is we overcomplicate it. You think you have to have a relationship or you got to know someone, and you make it really, really, really difficult. But here's the thing. If you all are in, especially those of you who are in a speaking space, those of you who are authors, those of you who are in that thought leadership space, you're going to need publicity. I'm sorry to tell you, no one is paying you because you're a speaker these days. That job is done. And those of you who are falling for that crap, that is done. People now pay for influence. And so if you have access to influence, meaning you have major publications backing you and saying you're one of the top experts in this particular field or whatever it is, they will back you then for that. So that's how the big bucks come in. If you want to know how to be able to collectively get that kind of money to be able to speak, write, do whatever you want to do to be able to have influence, you're going to have major publications behind you. So let me talk to you about why you need publicity. Publicity is profitable. Mainstream publicity is profitable. Mainstream publicity for me has been profitable because for me, getting on certain television shows has been easy to get on when you've been referenced in a certain publication. And the thing is, why I think that I am a little bit more unique is I've been a writer for a lot of these publications and I have been mentioned in these publications. So the thing is, from the writer's perspective, I understand how people pitch to writers, and from the mention perspective, I understand what writers are looking for when they're looking for experts to fill in spaces in major publications or on the news. So the thing is, for me, I know for a fact that you can't get on stage without it. When people are reading your bio and they see, as mentioned in Forbes, as the top diversity expert at such and such, as mentioned on Inc., da-da-da-da-da, when they're mentioning those things, it makes the audience want to lure in a little bit more, and it makes you a little bit more financially stable. People want to pay you for that. How do you get in? The thing is, I always tell people, please don't beg. Don't beg writers to be able to cover you. Every single day on my website, I tell people, this is a big like sign on my website, on my contact page. It says, don't pitch articles to me, because I go out and I look for talent. Don't pitch me any articles. And people will still pitch their people to me. Pitching what? I don't even understand. And half of the stuff that they're pitching is way too long. They haven't gotten my attention. I don't even understand what am I looking at? It's not worth my time, because a lot of the big PR firms, what they do is when they pitch their people, they pitch it with something called an index. And basically the index will say that I have a guest that I think you should consider, and their index is that they raised $5 million. You wrote an article recently about, you know, people who are raising $2 million. Well, I got somebody who raised $5 million. And so they're trying to index it against something you've already done. A lot of times when people who don't have that level of publicity, what they do is they'll pitch me an article and basically say, hi, Miss Tanisha. They'll say stuff like, I just want to pitch somebody to you to be able to cover at Forbes. And then when you read the story, some long rags to riches, you know, she lived in a car. And then after she finished living in a car, she went ahead and got out of the car and started a business. And now she's a candle maker. And you're like, what is this story all about? So you're not indexing a story I've already written with something you want to see me write about with that particular person or yourself. And so when you're trying to pitch to like Forbes and you're trying to pitch to Inc. and Entrepreneur and all of that stuff, please understand, if you don't know the person who you're connecting with and you don't know the level of what they're writing about, don't pitch yourself. Like this, that's not a, you don't need, that's not a good idea. Because the thing is, people like me can tell when you have not read my content. So when you pitch, you say stuff like, Carol, you inspire me. Your column in Inc. is the greatest. And so I want to tell you about my rags to riches story. And I'm like, do you ever see any content that I write is about rags to riches? None, because you haven't indexed it against something else that I've already written. So the first thing I want to tell you is, if you want mainstream publications to cover you, whether it's the news, whether it's a magazine, the newspaper, whatever it is, the first thing you have to think about is, have I read this person's content? Don't go pitching to people and you haven't read the content, because people can tell. People like me on the writing side, I can tell when you haven't read my content, because nothing you're pitching is in relevance to anything you've ever seen me write. I have 420 something articles between Forbes, Entrepreneur, and Inc. And I can tell you've read none of them just by the way you're pitching me a story. I'm like, I'm not interested in that, because it's not according to my catalog of content. So why would you pitch me something that's about a rags to riches story that I've never written? The second thing is, please don't suck up to the writer, because many of us, we got way too many things to do. The thing is, I'm a contributor for most of these publications, but that's not my full-time gig. So I got other things to do. So you don't have to suck up to me with this whole, I admire you, you inspire me, and this, that, the other. What you do with writers with that is you make it seem as though if I flatter you, then you'll do this for me. But the thing is, you're trying to use me. And so I don't need that, because I have a whole other company that I have to run. And this is just a benefit. Writing is a benefit. So I don't have to necessarily cover stories of people who I don't feel like doing, because I don't have to do this. It's not my full-time gig. My thing is always just make it very neutral. I have somebody that I think you should consider, or that I think I should be considered because my story is. And here's the thing, instead of showering me with chivalry and great compliments, get to 4 or 5 bullet points, because I have, bam, started a company that raised $5 million. The second thing is, I am from Detroit. The third thing is, you know, my husband died. Like, give me the 5 quick points and I can kind of determine from there if I can make something out of it. But that's about all I really am concerned about. So the thing is, don't suck up to the writer, because content writers don't have time to be able to analyze your whole life story. Just don't sit there, you know, meddling in this whole, I love you, you're nice, I like your content. A lot of us, we're not even into that, because the thing is, this is not a paying gig for us. So when people pitch things to me, I'm like, I don't really read it, and I don't mean to be ignorant, and I don't read half of the inbox messages of people trying to pitch articles to entrepreneurs and stuff like that, because simply put, it's admiration. It's all admiration. That's not how you do things. You have to make yourself be able to get out into a space of being found, and you have to put yourself in a space of really trying to be found in those particular spaces. And so, hello, Miss Janice. You have to put yourself into a space of really being found. So the thing is, when all these publications cover, let me just talk about on my side. When I've been covered by Forbes, when I've been covered by Inc., when I've been covered by Entrepreneur, when I've been covered by Glamour, it's not because I pitched to anybody. I had something out there that was worth covering. Then the second thing is I built a very organic relationship with those writers, because those writers had access to other publications. Like I said, many of us are not sitting around writing for one publication. We write for multiple publications. So one article that you see in O magazine, that writer might write for O, they might write for the New York Times, they might write for the Wall Street Journal. So building a relationship with that person is important. Sucking up doesn't work. You have to build a relationship. And in that organic relationship, you want to do things like ask them how you can support them, share their content. You want to make sure that if they're having events, if you can support it in any way, you want to build into that rapport with them. You don't want to get into this whole I like you kind of thing, but then you don't build a relationship with me outside of that. See this thing called a phone? I say people just do the dumbest thing with this phone, yes? Because the thing is, you have these writers, and if that writer writes for 9 publications and they see some benefit in you for maybe 5 of them, you should be using your phone to keep in consistent contact with people. I build relationships. I'm not into sucking up to anybody. So the thing is, when you build relationships, they want to cover you. They want to keep you as a resident expert. For example, I've been a resident expert for Fast Company for almost 2 years now. Anytime they're writing a negotiating piece, they call me. And this only on the phone. They text me, hey, Carol, you busy? Can you just read something really quickly and put your input in here? Next thing you know, I have another quote I can add to my bio that says, as referenced in Fast Company, or as referenced in the New York Times, because that writer that I have a relationship with that made me in residence is now with the New York Times and Fast Company. So I have a double relationship. So when people say, well, who did you contact? Who's your publicist? I say, my publicist is my phone. I have relationships. I build relationships with all of these publications and all of these writers so that in the event they're covering something that's right within my wheelhouse, we can connect with each other. That relationship is not about kissing up to anybody. I don't kiss anybody's backside for anything. I simply want to make sure I keep that rapport going. The next thing you want to do in order to be in this particular category, to get mainstream publication publicity, let me tell you something. The main thing you got to do is you got to be consistent. You can't go from your bedroom to the boardroom like that. You got to go and be consistent. You got to build a cadence of consistency. What I mean by that is, what are you doing consistently to keep your voice active in the market? So if your expertise is how to build computers, if your expertise is encouragement, whatever your expertise is, you got to do it consistently. You can't wake up and then the day you're not encouraged to do something, you don't do it, and you show up occasionally, and then you want to go straight to publication credibility. You can't do that. What are you doing consistently to build brand equity every single day? So, for example, I hadn't been on social media yesterday. I was traveling, right? That was yesterday. But brand equity, I put out one of the top articles on Inc. magazine yesterday, but I didn't put it out yesterday. I actually put it out Friday, but we timed it for yesterday because I knew I'd be traveling yesterday. So you wouldn't have missed me if you're really paying attention to my content, because you would have thought, well, she wasn't on Facebook yesterday. That's you paying attention to Facebook. But you have no idea that if you go to my Twitter page, I think it was like 100 and something reshares yesterday alone. Then Sunday night was another 300 or 400 of them alone. Go to Carol Sankar, you can see it. I wasn't available because I knew I'd be on the road. But then brand equity, I'm putting in the consistency of making sure that my voice is still active in what I actually put out in the marketplace. So even though I wasn't able to be physically public, right? Physically in this publicity space, I was able to be public at a time when most people would like, oh, I'm not in the mood, I'm traveling, I'm tired, I've been in the airport all day. No excuses. I was building brand equity even though I wasn't present. So those of you who only do it when you're in the mood, or today you don't see any likes, tomorrow you don't see any likes, like you do it whenever you only get some feedback, you'd be shocked how many people are paying attention to the fact that you're inconsistent. So always build brand equity by doing things at times when even you think nobody's paying attention. So I knew yesterday when this article was going to hit the market, I knew exactly what time it was going to hit. I knew I would not be available to even see it through, but at least I knew in my physical absence, I had content regurgitating in the market and regurgitating, and people have been sharing it nonstop. With that alone, I now know other publications are paying attention to the fact that every single day I got content, whether it's verbal content. I built a podcast that has content. I have built a YouTube channel that I'm working on that's going to be able to build more content. I've got written content. So every single day, I've got consistent stuff coming out, even if you don't see me on Facebook. I've got consistent stuff hitting the market on different platforms. If you don't follow me in all platforms, you probably won't see it. But every single day, I've got content coming out on various platforms. This is how writers start paying attention. You're always around. They know that you're like a little bee. You can't really find you. It can't really kill you, but they know you're always buzzing around. You always got something out there. So you've got to be consistent, because again, writers are always writing and they're always looking for experts. However, they can't find you if you're only doing it Tuesday and Thursday. And also, if I may put a little bit of a bit of salt on this a little bit. For those of you who are always looking for publicists, cut that dream out right away. It's hard to get a good publicist if you haven't built brand equity, because a publicist is nothing but someone who's going to take advantage of your debit card every single month or every single week, depending on, and you haven't built brand equity, and they're going to start you on the smallest scale possible. That's never going to allow you to grow. So the thing is, you want to get to Forbes, and right now they got you at Baby Gump or something like that. They can't get you that much further because you're not consistent and they haven't gotten those relationships. The thing that I always tell people about publicists, until you have consistent brand visibility and consistent brand value, don't hire one, because you're not ready yet. You have to stop making the excuse that you don't have the time, you don't know what to say, you don't know what to do. If you record a podcast, or even my phone has these things called voice notes. So even if I'm not in the mood to write an article, I record voice notes. Even when I'm in the airport, I record voice notes. I might have a thought, I record voice notes. Then I come home, and on my computer, I can transcribe the voice notes, and then I take the voice notes and then I turn that into more content. That piece of content might be a quote on somebody else's content. You got to be able to kind of get into that realm. But those of you who are consistently always trying to find a publicist and you haven't built any brand equity, nobody's paying you for what you do. Nobody's paying you well above the $5,000 mark for a speech or anything like that. If you haven't gotten to that level yet, do not hire a publicist. You're not ready. A publicist is a great way to take your credit card or your debit card and consistently put it in rotation to be able to make you broke. And their consistent rotation of making you broke is because they know you don't have the brand equity to pitch to people like me. By the time I see publicists that I know are trying to pitch people who don't have anything to offer, and I ignore them, and they keep doing it over and over again. Like, Carol, can you read my such and such article on such and such? And I'm reading this stuff and I'm like, no, I'm not covering it. And they're like constantly trying to belligerently get in my nerves. It's because you're dealing with the wrong publicist. A publicist, a good one, a really good one, a really reputable one, is supposed to already have those relationships done. Many of you don't check the people's relationships. You're just like, oh, she's a publicist, she got such and such coverage over there. But that's because that person may have brand equity. You have none, and then you want the publicist to give you brand equity. That's not how this works. You've got to learn how to pitch you a lot better, because if you get a third party to pitch you to any other major publication or to any major news source or news outlet, you will find that they will never really value what you offer the market, because simply put, just simply put, you haven't done a lot of the footwork yourself. So the thing is, now that I have representation, it's because I put so much brand equity out there that people want to represent me. Now, it's not a conceit thing. It's just that I work at a strategic level, and I put enough content out there. I mean, by the time you turn around, I've done a lot of stuff over the years. I've been a keynote at Inc. magazine. I've been a keynote at Forbes. By the time I put my collective out there, I can say that I can afford for somebody to represent me. And that's because I did the work. I tried having the publicist back in the day. And I think I've told this story. Some of you may not know me like that, but let me tell the story anyway. So what had happened was I hired a publicist way too early in the game. Didn't have anything to offer. Nobody was really paying me anything. And I thought the publicist can do all the work and I can sit back and get the phone call on where I needed to show up to do speeches or, whatever. And I had a book at the time that came out and it was doing fairly well. I hired this publicist and this publicist tells me that he books me a gig in Atlanta and I needed to show up at this particular address. This was during the time when GPS wasn't as good as it is now. That was when you had the Garmin in the middle of your car and you typed the thing in and it never told you where you were going. It just showed you the street signs. Now that we have different types of GPS, it tells you what you're going to. But this time, this would turn here, turn left, turn right. So I did all of that. Now, mind you, I go to Atlanta fairly frequently for my retail stores, but I've never been in this part of Atlanta. I turn, I follow the directions. And when I got there, I realized this is a strip club. And I kept thinking, oh, this is not a strip club. And then I keep looking and I even call him back, is this a strip club? He's like, yeah, I didn't want to tell you because I knew you'd judge it because maybe of your personal or your religious beliefs that you might not want to be in a strip club. Why am I at a strip club? Are they doing an event at the strip club? He was like, yeah, it's called Life After the Pole. I said, oh, well, good for them. I'm good. It's not that I judged the women or anything like that. I just knew based on what I was seeing from where I was standing, what I was walking into. But this is because it's my fault. I hadn't built enough equity in the market to hire anybody. So of course, this is what he can get me. And yeah, you're paying me $300-400 and that's just enough for gas money at that time. I don't really need this. And from walking away from things like that, I realized I really went into this publicity realm way too early. I needed to put enough work in on the Carol Sankar brand in places where most people will kind of get away from not knowing me in that realm. And I had to kind of rework myself. And I was upset about the fact that I was at a strip club. I didn't go inside. I should have gone inside and see what was going on for really no. But I know, anyways, and sorry. But I didn't go inside. I didn't go inside. But when I thought about it and I thought it through, I went too early. I pulled the trigger too early. I thought he could do the work. I can show up, collect the big bucks. Yippee-yi-yay, I'm going to get some money today. It was the wrong attitude I took from the beginning because I realized I needed to do so much more work. And that was, I think, between that time and the time that I came out with the Confidence Factor, I hadn't actually done anything. I needed to have a sabbatical from nonsense. I was tired of the nonsense. And sometimes the coaching world is a bunch of nonsense. It's a bunch of fluff and buffoonery that I just needed no part of. And I needed to be able to distance myself from the crap that's in the market where, the $5 coach. And I had to get away from that because I realized he had represented a lot of those people and I didn't want to be guilty by association. So I hadn't talked from like maybe 2011 to about 2014 is when I started writing the Confidence Factor. I stayed away from the market altogether. When I came back in the market, all I did was strategically build relationships, brand equity. Every time I was building brand equity, and I refused to be lured in by people who were not doing things on a level of what I wanted to do. So I said, you know what? I would rather not be represented than to be lured in by people who made me guarantees and promises based on my debit card and not based on my value and my worth. And that's how I scored TEDx. TEDx was my first talk before actually I launched a book. When I launched a white paper, TEDx was my first talk. So imagine I took a sabbatical, sat back, said, I'm not saying anything. I'm not joining this coaching nonsense. This is not happening. I'm not even getting involved. I'm getting away from this publicist thing. I don't want a publicist, but I want to be in Forbes. I want to be an entrepreneur. I want to be in the New York Times. How do I do that? Say something that is relevant. Don't pitch, but show up in a big way. And the first talk I got was TEDx. Then the book comes out. Then the Steve Harveys. And then that's how that kind of happened. But that was all me. So I didn't have a publicist during that time. So when people ask me who represented me to get on the Steve Harvey show, God and Carol Sankar. God and Carol Sankar. That was it. Nobody else. I took a sabbatical from the nonsense and got away from people who were doing nonsense. And I simply got into a very cultivated space with whom I knew I wanted to serve. And I knew I didn't want to serve people making candles. That was just not who I was. I was not that girl. I have way too much education to be able to serve that market. So with me and God had a real discussion, and I said, this is who I want to serve. And that's how those things started to come into my being. So the first thing you have to understand is you got to work your own self before you start hiring a publicist. Some of you haven't gotten to that level yet. And although you may be making money, you got to be making money and making a difference at the same time and making a noticeable difference. You got to be consistent. If you're not showing up consistently, don't even try to hire a publicist. Start a blog, start a podcast, but whatever you do, be consistent and start something and start it now. Stop waiting for the perfect time. Stop shopping for the logo. Simply get started. And the moment that you get started, you start seeing how you're able to really metastasize this whole thing with brand equity. Because the next thing that you have to do in order for you to get mainstream coverage is many of you, this is where I'm going to disappoint some of you right about now. Many of you need to really think about Medium and LinkedIn. I don't spend a lot of time on Facebook. As many people like to say, oh, I love your just ventings and your posts and things like that. That's just to entertain you. Facebook is not where my people are hanging out. I'm sorry. I love you all, but that's not where my people are hanging out. My people are hanging out on LinkedIn. My people that I'm doing business with are hanging out in executive places like that. But you have to hang out there. Now, here's the thing about LinkedIn and Medium. LinkedIn is not a place that engages people. So you can easily think nobody's listening because nobody's responding. And I understand that, but you have to be patient with it. It is engaging. People are looking, they are paying attention, but everybody can't get involved in every conversation. So here's the thing. Every publication has an editor and a contributor and an staff writer, including the news. So if you want to get featured on NBC, MSNBC, CNN, all of their producers are on LinkedIn. They're not on Facebook. So those of you who do all these Facebook live streams all day long, I love you, but they're not hanging out here. They never have and they never will. They're hanging out on LinkedIn. Now, here's the thing. You'll never be able to actually click and friend them. That's not going to happen. You have to be consistent on LinkedIn and on Medium. And I'm mentioning Medium for a reason, because I think people like to say that because I like to write, that I've been fortunate to be able to get certain opportunities because I like to write. No, I actually like to speak. So Medium has been through this phone. That's why I'll never get rid of this phone, because most of my articles are just voice notes. And that's all I did. Voice notes, transcribed to Medium. If you go to my Medium account at medium.com/Carol Sankar, you're going to see, I think like 300 articles that I've written. 2 of them made the New York Times bestseller list without my help. Somebody liked something I wrote, and she wrote me this letter and basically said that I wanted to use a quote of yours in a book that was coming out. And I said, cool. Well, nothing in my life is free. So I said, you'd have to buy it. And we exchanged the price. She bought the article and it went to the book. I didn't think the book was going to be anything at that time, but it ended up being a New York Times bestseller. The New York Times contacted me and says, we want to send you an award for being a New York Times best contributor. I was like, little old me? And then I realized it was strictly because of something I had said on voice notes that transcribed into Medium that somebody else was interested in. They bought the content and it made it into her book, which was a New York Times bestseller. Then if you actually go to Working Mother magazine, you're going to see another article with my name on it. I wrote it on Medium. That's all I did. Here we go again. I got the phone. I was saying something. I was having a thought. I was having some deep thought. So I got on the phone and I'm like, ba, 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 ba. And I transcribed the article. I get home. I transcribe it in this computer back here. Boom. I put the thing in. Next thing you know, the article has been written. I'm sitting at home, minding my business, probably eating some roti or something. And next thing you know, I get a phone call, not a phone call, I get a text message on Twitter from Working Mother magazine. Can we have your content? We just saw this article that you published. I went through the scroll on Medium and they had been trying to contact me for days, didn't realize they were trying to contact me. I contacted them back. We made a fiduciary commitment. They got the article. Anything you want, you can have as long as you pay the right price. And I gave it to them. So then I have a longer cadence and a longer shelf life when I have those publications backing me up, because then I didn't have to go out and pitch to Working Mother magazine. So my thing is, if you're not writing consistent content, and being able to kind of show what you have the ability to do, publications don't pay you no attention. And that's why I said consistency is key. So you got to pay attention to LinkedIn and Medium a lot more closely. I don't do the Thrive Global thing anymore. I tried that, Janice. So I like Thrive Global, but I don't think, and I'm just judging it from today. So let's have this conversation today. In 3-4 months, this conversation may be irrelevant. I don't think it's a publication that has grown to the levels of where Huffington Post had grown to. And I don't think it has that competitive edge. If you do real good content on your own Medium and kind of leave the Thrive Global alone, I think you'll, I am a writer for Thrive Global, but I haven't written there in years. Because I just didn't see where it wasn't going anywhere, because Thrive Global, it just doesn't have that presence yet. It's getting there, but to me, and this is just me speaking on a little bit of a bias, I think she has not put as much attention into Thrive Global the way she put in Huffington Post. That's number one. And number two, the marketing bucks behind Thrive Global has not done what it's supposed to do. So that's the reason why I took a lot of my content and never went back to Thrive, and I went straight to Medium. And Medium has helped me to be able to have more of an expanded reach where I don't have to be restricted. Plus, here's the thing about Thrive versus Medium. On Medium, anybody can buy my content and anybody can have it, right? On Thrive, it belongs to Thrive. And I've always been this kind of person where if I'm going to write, I want it to be free flowing. And if there's something I want to say that may attract someone else, I don't mind selling that piece of content to anyone else, because then I know that content is going to help me to get booked someplace else. Because again, all the mainstream publications I've ever used, let me just be honest with all of you. I don't write for Inc. magazine because I just write for Inc. magazine. I have other things to do. I got real life. I got kid and the hubby and the travel and speaking. I got a lot going on. I got stores. Right now I got inventory control going on. I got stuff all around my house going on. I got a building that's being built. I got construction I have other things to do. But if you think for 1 second that being mentioned in Forbes and writing for Forbes hasn't benefited me financially, think again. If you think me not having a video on Inc. magazine as one of their speakers, as well as training their staff on that video, has not worked in my favor, think again. If you think that me being mentioned in Entrepreneur and writing for Entrepreneur has not benefited me, think again. So when I see that there's speakers who are pushing this one sheet and pushing this and that, then I'm like, what are you doing? You don't need to do that. Just put your expertise on an article, but make it in a free range and they'll pick it up. I didn't pitch to Inc. Inc. came to me. I was sitting at home, again, eating roti, doing what I do best. And I get a phone call. Hey, you want to come and write for us? Sure, I'll come. Forbes, same thing. Roger Ma, he was the guy who called me first. He saw a building that I was building, and he asked me about it. It was mentioned in Bloomberg the first time, and he said, hey, look, I saw this article in Bloomberg that mentioned that you were doing economic improvement on other buildings or something like that. And I said, yeah, and we started having a conversation. And from that conversation, he starts writing down notes. We were just talking. It was just a general conversation. And I forgot that he wrote for Forbes. The next thing you know, he calls me. He says, can I get an authentication on 4 quotes that I put in an article about financial inclusion, women in real estate? And I'm like, for what? He's like, for Forbes. I was like, okay, Forbes. You got, yes. Then the next year, somebody wrote an article that talked about the top 17 people of 2016 or 17, I don't remember which year it was, that talked about diversity, female diversity. I was on the list. I didn't even know that article was written. So if you think that hasn't benefited me, think again. I don't do this just to be able to be mentioned in certain places to look like I'm important. I do this because that also has a fiduciary commitment in other places. So when people are trying to book my brand in other places, there's a fiduciary commitment for that. All this mess that you think is behind me are badges of honor from all of those publications. There's a fiduciary commitment for that. And that opens you up to the spectators that really now want you to be on the news. And so all of that I used to get from the print media to the news media and beyond, because I've got shows lined up for, can't talk about it yet, but it's coming. We've been in talks for a little bit, but those things are coming because before I did Steve Harvey, I had done some other stuff. And then around that time I lost my father. So I needed some time to kind of like chill out. I needed a year, but a lot of that is me really being in these publications. So like I said, when I first started this talk, if you think for a second that people are hiring you to speak, to train, to be anywhere without wanting to know the value of your brand, think again. People don't hire speakers anymore. Those days are done. Everybody likes to ask you to volunteer. I know many of you who are listening to this live and are going to listen to the restream are like, why aren't anybody paying anybody to speak? It's really simple. People now pay for influence. Look, I'm not disrespecting this woman at all, but if Kim Kardashian could be the keynote at Forbes, no, it was Kim Kardashian in 2018, and in 2019 it was Cardi B. I'm just saying, it's influence. People are not paying because you got something to say. They're paying for influence. They're paying for your growth. If you're not taking advantage of major publications and the news and the media in a major way and getting out of this, I'm going to send a blog to my girlfriend who has a blog on www.nobodyreadsthiswebsite.com. You're wasting time. I don't even blog on my own website anymore, specifically because I'd rather use someone else's name and be able to have bigger brand equity in the marketplace and not have to work that hard. And I always say that if I'm going to speak, it has to make sense for me. I am not that girl that's showing up at everybody's event. Like I said, I have other things to do. I'm not showing up at everybody's event. I'm very selective with the things I say yes to. I'd rather not be in orbit. Like somebody said on Facebook yesterday, I haven't seen you lately. No, you haven't seen me because you're not in the rooms I'm hanging out in. It's not because I'm not there. I'm just not in the rooms you're hanging out in. And so to be able to have that brand equity, to be able to say, you don't see me because I'm not where you are. I'm in these rooms. If you come up to these rooms, then you'll be able to see me. But that doesn't happen without you being completely visible in the marketplace. And you have to be visible for what you do, not for what you've helped somebody else to do. This is why I think I said this quote the other day. I see too many thought leaders quoting everybody else except themselves. You quoting Oprah all day. You quoting Tyler Perry all day. You're quoting everybody else. And you're calling yourself a thought leader? What are your thoughts? Nobody pays for people who they cannot see. And so the days of asking people to speak for money are over unless you have brand equity. The second thing is you got to get into major publications. The only way to do that is to stop begging people for the opportunity to get into there. You don't have to beg. You got to build relationships. Some of you build transactional relationships. You only do things when you're getting something back in return. It has to be organic. It has to feel organic. It has to feel like you genuinely want to build and mesh with those people. For example, I have a very close relationship with the producer from, is it ABC? I think it's ABC. I always get this wrong. NBC and ABC. I always get those two wrong. I want to say it's ABC. I have a very close relationship with her because there's something that she needed after the show that me and her started talking about. And now, again, I don't use this for play. This is not to be able to watch out to see what Chris Brown is doing. I use this for strictly business and to be able to build that relationship. So she and I talk almost every week about things, you know, relating to that thing. And that has been able to be that kind of way. When I said, look, I need some time to myself, she got it. But then when it's like, I want to get back out there, she's in there because I've invested in that relationship. It's not transactional for me. I'm not interested in transactional people. As a matter of fact, I don't even deal with transactional people because I believe that you can't build a business and you cannot be profitable and you cannot have publicity without it. There are only but so many gatekeepers in the publicity world. So you have to know who they are, what they do, and how you can invite yourself to their party and how you can be able to invite yourself into their realm. Because again, anytime you see an article from me, if you do, anytime you see an article from me, best believe those are relationship-based, and best believe there's something else that comes out of this stuff. I'm not just writing because I have nothing else to do. And so because I've been on the writing side and I've been on the featured side, I know what it takes to get in. But many of you are kind of like, okay, well, if I do Facebook Live all day, it's going to be, no, it's not. Because the people who are making those kinds of decisions, They don't hang out here. They're hanging out on LinkedIn. So go over to LinkedIn, work on your LinkedIn page, get that summary up. Make sure that it's like bold, like I am. Everything has to start in first person on LinkedIn. I am a this, I do that, I can do this. Here's some literature about me. Here's some works about me. Here's some pictures of me doing the thing I said I can do. Here's the things that I used to be able to do, but I no longer do, but I've been an expert in these fields. Here's my educational credentials. Here are the things, the people who I've partnered with. Put that out there on LinkedIn. Now, again, you cannot be friends with these producers, but they can see you. You'd be shocked how they see you. They'd be like, oh, there's a new profile in town that I need to know about. And you start connecting the dots. And don't be absent on LinkedIn because you're not seeing people connect. Don't be absent because you're not seeing them talk back to you. They will start talking to you, but you got to be consistent. You can't do this on days when you're in a good mood, you know. You have to do this every single day. Even if you have nothing to say, find something to say, you know, or even if you were to be able to get into someone else's content and say, hey, Richard, I saw you just had this article. It's a great article, and share it. You have to engage a little bit more because, again, Facebook tends to be a little bit more for your friends. LinkedIn is for your business, and all of the people who are going to make those decisions are on LinkedIn. You got to get on Medium because on Medium, at least when you write, you have free range on how that's going to take place. It's organic content, so it comes directly from you. Like I said, if y'all think I have carpal tunnel, I use this phone, and I write all my voice notes in the phone. I come home, plug in my USB, and I transcribe what I said. Then when I transcribe what I said, I turn it into an article. My assistant kind of helps me with the judging of the stuff. Next thing you know, I got an article out there. I put that on Medium, and that works. And then people start picking me up. And the next thing you know, that's how I got to Inc. That's how I got to Forbes. That's how I got to Entrepreneur. I didn't do anything specific, but one thing I didn't do is for the time that I had been between Steve Harvey and probably the time that I did the Today Show, I hadn't had a publicist and I didn't need one. Me, God, had a very good conversation. I didn't need a publicist. So for those of you who are like, I got to find a publicist, Carol, who represents you? I represent me. And if I put enough equity out there, people start buying into it. All right, I'm done. I stayed longer than I was supposed to. My phone is going off like crazy, and that means somebody's trying to reach me. It's going off like crazy, and it means somebody's trying to reach me. If there's any way I can support you, never hesitate to let me know. But my thing is, I'm really in a space where in 2020, if I don't see a major publication, cutting you off, because it's not fair. I'm tired of waking up in the morning, and I know you have the potential to do so much more, but you're sitting around going, you know, ring around the rosies in a hamster wheel with things that really are not going to help you to be able to grow. If you think for that moment that a lot of the things that you're doing are going to help you grow, think again. You've been doing this how long? Like, how long is too long to be at the same level? Like, I'm playing Facebook in less than 30 days. If you think I'm not nervous, think again. I'm doing a production style for Facebook in 30 days. If you don't know anything about that, I'm the headliner for Facebook on December 3rd. I'm playing at a different level. And all of this is because of publicity, not because I'm just talking about it. It's publicity. You guys got to get into that. That's where the money is. The money is not sitting around here tweeting and sharing. It's in who is mentioning you and who's talking about you. So get people chatting your name every single day, and you're going to start to see the results. Yes, Miss Janice, we leveling up, because I'm serious. I'm cutting off people in 2020 who I mean, seriously, like, how long is too long to be on your friend's blog? Like, come on. How long is too long to be writing on your own blog? You could have been out there already. Again, build some relationships. Use your phone to build relationships. Don't use your phone to look at gossip. Use your phone to build relationships. There are only but a few select writers out here, and they're always looking for guest experts. They're always looking for resident experts. You got to be in that know, because like I said, from Essence, I've done Essence, Wall Street Journal, Ebony Magazine. I can't even think of half of them. Glamour. I've done Old Magazine twice. I've done a lot of them. And the thing is, when people think that there's something specific, you wouldn't believe some of them. If you actually look at the names of the writers, you'll find out some of them are the same people. Why? building brand equity and building relationships. You'd find out that the same writer who wrote about me in O Magazine was the same writer who wrote about me in Glamour. Why? Because it's the same company that owns them all, Hearst Media. You're getting good with one person there, they spread you across the board. Same thing with Inc. I've been in Fast Company Inc. because the same owner owns both. The New York Times, Wall Street Journal, and a few others. You're getting good with one, they start spreading you out. And next thing you know, when people read your bio, they know you don't work for free. They know it. They're like, you know what? I don't think she works for free. And they know that they have to respect your value from that point on. Okay, so anyway, I have to go. It's 12 o'clock. I have things to do. If there's any way I can support you, never hesitate to let me know. I'll see you all soon, and get working on publications from now on. I'd probably be very absent from now until December 3rd, but we'll talk here and there as we go along. LOL. See you all soon.